I'm not sure that I have ever brought you for a tour of a collection as impressive and jaw-dropping as we're going to be seeing today. Hi guys, I'm Shmi, hello and welcome back to the channel where you join me here at the Nationales Automuseum, the Loh Collection in the heart of Germany, an hour from Frankfurt and an hour from Cologne, to take a look around this display of approximately 150 cars from throughout the history of automotive. Everything from an 1895 Benz Victoria to the new AMG 1. It's not just Mercedes. There's also a new Ferrari exhibit which is currently being prepared, and we're going to be able to take a first look. But we're going to go for a tour and take in what is easily one of the most impressive displays of incredible cars you will ever see. This is just a taster of what's on show. I mean, I'm standing beside the first Michael Schumacher championship-winning Ferrari Formula One car. There are Le Mans winners. There are cars with so many incredible motorsport success stories. But not only that, it's the way this collection is presented, is displayed, the different environments that have been created to showcase everything in their full glory. This is very much scratching on the surface as we go around and take in some of the highlights. Where else would you find a one-of-one Maybach Accelero alongside a race-winning 1960s Ford GT40, plus the original prototype of the Mercedes-Benz CLK GTR and a brand new AMG 1, all the way through all sorts of different cars? Join me for a journey of discovery here at the Nationales Automuseum. We're going to get straight to this. Now, I did a fair bit of research before coming, and I tell you what, there are plenty of surprises inbound, even for me as well. Now, this museum opened last year. It's already welcomed 40,000 visitors, but even here in the welcome area, you get a sense of the different environments. There's also a restaurant here. In fact, the museum won an award in its very first year, which is quite phenomenal. But we're heading up to take a look at the new Ferrari exhibit. This is a preview of the brand new Ferrari exhibit. And yes, we are immediately greeted by the famous Big Five, which I didn't realize were all part of the collection. But that's just the start, because this is about all things Ferrari. We are talking Formula One cars, race winners from Mille Miglia and Daytona, and some beautiful classics. And each of the cars here in the collection actually has an amazing story, every single one, in terms of its production number, in terms of its previous owners, in terms of its race history. So this 288 GTO, which was really the start of the Ferrari, what we now call hypercars, but really supercars of the time, which is not exactly a common car to begin with, was previously owned by the founder of Asterix. Now, when I was younger, I loved Asterix and Obelix, and that's a very cool thing. Now, that, like the F40 alongside it, are in Rosso Corsa, in fact the entire lineup, which at the time was more or less all you could have on those cars from Ferrari. But once the F50 arrived, which many of you will know as my all-time lottery win dream car, you couldn't really choose many options, but there were some available. So for example, you'll spot that this car has gold wheels. It is one of only two cars that originally left the factory with gold wheels. It's also sat here with its soft top in place on the top as well. Normally you'd see it with either the hard top or opened up. Right in front is actually Niki Lauda's first Ferrari Formula One car from 1974, and in fact even signed by Niki Lauda himself as well. But that's really where his journey with the Scuderia began. The Ferrari Enzo, named after the founder of the company himself, sits here alongside the LaFerrari, and of course, who knows what for the future. Up ahead, this is the 250S. Now, it will soon be joined by another car alongside, but this is the actual car that won the 1952 Mille Miglia and a host of other achievements as well, while also being the very first Ferrari 250. So all of the cars like the 250P, 250LM, 250 GTO, all spawned from the original success with that. Over on this side, center stage is one of the pinnacles of the collection. In fact, one of the pinnacles of cars really to begin with, the 330 P3, the 412P. This is actually the car that, as per the image on the wall behind, placed third Daytona in 1967. It also ran at Le Mans in 66 and 67, DNF, because of course Ferrari were being pushed very hard at the time by Ford, the Ford versus Ferrari story. That's the actual car. They're all the actual cars. Come over here, and this is one of the most successful Formula One cars of all time, Michael Schumacher's 2004 car, which was victorious, I believe, in 8 of its 11 races at the time, which is a feat that until recently had basically not really been matched. Immensely successful F1 championship winning car again. Come past, more beautiful cars on display. This, for example, is a one-of-one rebodied car, which was actually done for Aga Khan. In fact, inside, if I come and show you this, come and take a quick look here. The interior, back in the 60s, was actually retrimmed with Hermes material. Yes, you've seen it on recent hypercars, but this was done way back when. Just imagine trying to squeeze out that spare wheel and tyre over the top of those very delicate seats. You'd absolutely want to be looking after those. Opposite, though, I want to talk about this. The actual car that Kimi Räikkönen drove across the finish line of the Brazil GP in 2007 when he won the Formula One World Championship, the last Ferrari F1 title winner itself. That car, which is just extraordinary. Some beautiful, beautiful cars that are here on display, and so much really to come and take a look at. But as I mentioned, it's also about the presentation, about the appearance. I mean, look at the way that this is presented in here. This is absolutely stunning. The 275 330p. This is stunning. Again, immense stories behind each and every car in this area that's currently being prepared and ready for more arrivals. Extra cars are going to be presented when this is fully opened. But this is just the start. We should probably rewind things back a bit. Winding back to the pre-war selection. Now, I can't show you everything. You have to come and visit, but we can pick out some highlights. And I'm going to start over here with the oldest car in the collection. This is the Benz Victoria from 1895. Benz was originally started with the patent motorwagen back in 1886, nearly 140 years ago. Less than 10 years later was this, and it's completely unrestored. Fully original condition, the complete opposite of the AMG 1 and the CLK GTRs and the other things we're going to get to. Now, alongside it, believe it or not, this 1906 Lerner fire engine is fully electric, or in 1906 it was fully electric. In fact, later on, an engine was added to be used as a hybrid, as a range extender. Think about that in terms of technology. That's about 120 years old, again, in fully original condition. Coming over here, just to pick some things out, in front of us is a Talbot Lago T26. The chassis and underpinnings are from the 1930s, a race car. It was rebodied in 1948 by Sauchik with this low roof, sports luxury design, race car for the road back then. Coming through, where do we begin? The Mercedes-Benz SSK 710. This is actually one of only 29. I have taken a look at one before, but that period of motorsport, taking part in the Mille Miglia in the 1920s and 1930s, has dictated so much of obviously what has happened since, and the cars that I love, even in the modern day. The Duesenberg that we have here, the Model J, this is quite an interesting story. This car's from America. Look underneath at the red underside, a little akin to a Louboutin shoe. But not only that, in the Prohibition period, this was actually registered as a fire truck because, and you can tell it's a fire truck with the red lights, if I come through over here, down the side, take a look at this. It was able to carry 3 liquid tanks if it was registered as a fire truck, which of course had a benefit back at that time in terms of how the car could be used. Come through over this way, that car is a Bentley 4.5 litre SC blower. The Bentley boys back in the 1920s won at Le Mans in 1927, but the blower was 28, 29, 30, winning every year at the 24 hours. The blowers are famous for many reasons, but this particular car belonged to Wolf Bernato, the owner of Bentley at the time. That exact one. Over here, again, completely original, believed to be the only one still in existence of this particular Mercedes, a roadster, no B-pillar to be spotted, and just part of the most amazing setup and display of everything behind. And this is just the start. Let's keep heading through. We're still pre-war, but now pre-war with style. And in fact, I've never seen one of these before. A Bucciali, one of only 3 in existence. This thing is enormous. And what's interesting is this roof line, this low roof, very much akin to a hot rod, but from back in its day. Opposite it is a Bentley 6.5 litre Speed 6, short wheelbase, but still huge relative to many other things from back at the time. It's very interesting to me how cars of these eras were either tiny or absolutely massive. I mean, the Bugatti 57s are absolutely beautiful. The Mercedes right here, the 500K, and keep coming through because even here there's a cinema setup where visitors here to the museum can see different videos of the cars as well. The little Topolino that we have from Fiat, with of course the new modern take of that now arriving as well. And then you come up here in the 770K Cabriolet. That thing is massive alongside another stunning Duesenberg. I mean, the detail of this, it is absolutely beautiful. But this is just the start. We have a little Citroen here, as I mentioned. Again, that's 1920s, but tiny in comparison. Then next to it over here is actually one of the 1990s remakes of the patent Motorwagen that Mercedes made. So you often find these, again, very rare, but featuring in amazing collections. Before it's time to go take a look at the main hall. On the banked curve behind me, again, even more that we're going to go through in a second, but I have to pick out just some highlights and some things that stand out to me. You have to come and visit to see it all. But an unusual addition here is a 1963 Lincoln Continental with a bit of a morbid story, because this is the exact car that JFK last exited alive. It's the car he was chauffeur-driven in on the morning of the assassination, which you probably wouldn't expect to find here in Germany, but it's in the collection. Over this side, everything from some micro cars, and there's in fact a big collection of them, to a beautiful Bugatti alongside, and just progressing through the eras. Although I want to beeline to this, which I'm sure you've spotted. I've been a big fan of the 300SL Gullwings for a long time. It is by far my favorite classic. It really was the start of the SLS AMG Black Series, which I have in my collection. But this, of all the Gullwings, is quite an extraordinary one, because there are only 29 like this with an alloy body, aluminium cars. This, out of those 29, is car number 1. What's interesting as well about that is that this carries a regular Gullwing VIN, as opposed to car 2 onwards, so the other 28, which all have their own sequence, making this unique. Now, behind it, come and take a look over here. This little section is amazing. The BMW 507 Roadster. The 507 has always been one of my absolute favorite BMW models. In the more modern era, you have the Z8, so many design features of which are inspired by this. Truly, truly beautiful. Up behind it is a really spectacular car, the Ferrari 250 GT Berlinetta Competizione, a 250 SWB, one of only 45 Competizione models. Again, breathtakingly beautiful. This is an original Cobra 289. Of course, Cobras have changed and there are many different replicas and things available out there now, but this is a totally original car, so much so, and I've got special permission to come and show you this, that in the back of it, if I carefully open up the trunk, the boot of this, have a look down there, where there are some original newspapers that were put in to protect with the roof that have remained in it ever since. That's quite the detail about a car like that. Again, we can't touch on every single thing that's here. We have a Jaguar E-Type, the car that even Enzo Ferrari admitted was beautiful. Behind it, the Lamborghini Miura SV, the SV being the ultimate version of the Miura. Effectively, there's the Yota and other racing derivatives. The Facel Vega up top as well, one of only 20 manual examples of that. Just every different car. As we progress almost through the eras, through the ages, I want to come in just over here to show you the Lamborghini Countach LP400 up here, because the story behind this car is that it was originally delivered, get this, to a customer in Haiti. It lived in Haiti, not entirely sure of its servicing history, therefore as a result, the paint colour is actually remarkably similar to Ferrari Rosso Dino, which would have been, or was introduced with the Dino in the 60s. I wonder, given that's an original 1975 early car sitting next to the Ferrari 512 BB alongside it as well. I mean, keep coming through, because next up is the DeLorean, obviously very well known DeLorean DMC-12. The Porsche 959 here, this is a 959S, so the lighter weight car, about 100 kilos lighter, only 29 of them again. It's a very, very rare thing. 29 seems to be a recurring number of the day. Up top is a Mercedes 190 Evo 2. These are, of course, iconic. To homologate the DTM car, they had to make 500. Out of those 500, this exact car, by the way, this one right here, number one, you've guessed it, number one of the 500. And this is before we get to the really standout little hypercar end of this. And don't worry, there's more to come. Stirling Moss. Named after Sir Stirling Moss, the absolutely legendary Mercedes McLaren SLR. Only 75 of them, very few of them aren't in the normal silver colour. So a very, very rare thing again. I think there are a couple in black, a couple in white, and this one obviously in the dark metallic grey, following the likes of the 722, the 722S, and of course the regular models that had come before. In the middle, the Bugatti Veyron Super Sport, one of 48 of the world record holding car of its time, obviously following on from the regular Veyron before the Chiron. The Super Sport WRE came with this orange contrast livery for the lower sections and the wheels. This is done with the same design and layout, but with the red detailing as opposed to the orange. And then, to me, I have to say, the Holy Grail. There's more to see on the Matchbox style stackers behind and even over this side, but to me, the CLK GTR Roadster is a car that, it's a complete unicorn. There are only 20-something CLK GTRs to begin with. The Roadsters, interestingly, officially, there are 5. Unofficially, there are 7. And there's an interesting story even behind that, one of which has the Super Sport engine. This is, of course, the prototype. So the prototype that had come before the 5 original cars. And when you come in closer and have a look at this, it's all of the details, like the way this side window is completely cut off. It's a car that was obviously homologated to race in GT1 in the 90s, and obviously homologated as a coupe with a roof snorkel. So once they took away the roof snorkel, they had to introduce additional cooling through these side intakes on the edges of the buttresses for the 6.9 litre V12 that you have back there. And then they had to redesign everything, like the wing back here, to make it all work. It is something truly unbelievable. And I did get to have a drive in a CLK GTR coupe a few years ago, and I will never forget that experience. And I can only imagine what it would be like in the Roadster, because you have to think, this is race car, but with a leather interior. It makes no sense. This and the 911 GT1, that those happened, just reflecting back. It's not a bad little lineup of cars behind us there. If you thought we were finished, there are more surprises in store. Come on around with me here. Firstly, a Fiat Abarth 695 SESE, of which about only 150 of the original 1,000 survive. But I always loved how they shoehorned in the engine back there, and it means that it basically has to have the hatch open to help with cooling and aero, but also because it just doesn't fit. A Ford Capri, maybe a classic Ford race car should be in my future, you never know. But come back here because we have NASCAR, DTM, Formula One, Le Mans, and so much more, with all of these incredibly clever storage racks, which effectively within 2 minutes can move any car around and get it out, which just looks amazing. It's like having toy cars on a shelf or something like that, except very special cars. I mean, we have a Dale Earnhardt Sr. winning car just there. We have the most successful winning NASCAR that's outside of the United States right here as well. On the other side just here is the, I think, original test car of the E30 M3 race car as well, completely perfect condition. This car is from the driver Ellen Loh, who is actually the only female who has won a DTM race. So again, quite cool. Opposite it is the DTM of the 190E. Remember, for that period, each car, they had to make the 500 road cars. That's one of the race cars from back in the 90s. There are all sorts of things as well around, like engines. That's a C-Class DTM engine from 94. On the stacking back there, that is the prototype of the Aston Martin DB4 GT. So of course the DB4 GT, and then they made the DB4 GT Zagato as well. And that's the original prototype. The DBRS 9 that we have here, obviously another successful era for Aston Martin racing. Above it is a 190 SL, which is actually where this collection effectively began, from that car and the the owner of the collection's love of cars beginning from one in that specification, silver over a blue interior with white sidewalls, and up above it is a 300 SL Roadster as well, although quite hard to see from here all of the cars that are on the different racks behind. This is an SLS GT3 powertrain, which is very cool to see from the V8 through the carbon prop tube. On the racks behind is an SLR GT, the 722 GT, which they made for the SLR Club Trophy. I think they only made about 11 of those. So it didn't really pick up, but very cool. And the new HDK is kind of modelled on that in many ways. Another C63 DTM. Behind is the SLS AMG GT3, one of the most successful GT3 cars with how many races they've won. But obviously Mercedes and motorsport throughout the whole of history. Silver arrows through to DTM before DTM took its new guys in GT3 format. Aston Martin had entered as well with the Vantage when it had launched. Before we find ourselves with some really significant cars here, we started earlier here with the 2000 Michael Schumacher Formula One, his first World Championship in the racing red of Ferrari, the actual car, that one, which is, I mean, it's almost priceless, isn't it? If you think about everything and the story and the success that Michael Schumacher had racing. Come back here and again, this is really just awestruck, or that's how I feel. The 1984 Tyrrell that we have there. Next to it, this McLaren Honda is Ayrton Senna's car from Monaco, 1989. He won the race that year. This car is full intact with the Honda engine. Most of them don't maintain the engines, but that's the car the great Ayrton Senna drove at Monte Carlo that year. And then beyond it is Mika Häkkinen's car from 1999, his World Championship year. Again, another unbelievable piece of F1 history. And these are the original cars. These are the actual cars that they drove across the line, still fully intact and technically ready to go. And then on the shelves behind, now probably need to step back. Let's start a little bit higher. I mean, from here, you can spot the yellow of the 917K, come down below it, and the silver Mercedes CLR. In 1999, after the CLK GTR in 97, 98, in 99, they made the CLR, and famously, they flipped. 2 of the 3 cars flipped before they pulled in the third. So this is the one that didn't flip over right there. Behind it, Rothman's 956, and then down below, the Audi Le Mans cars. And in fact, right here is the only one of Audi's 13 winning Le Mans cars outside of Audi. This is the only one. Audi owned the other 12, and this is, well, I mean, it's a Le Mans winner. I look at that thing, totally open. Absolutely, absolutely unbelievable, out of this world. However, that's not all. Come through with me. We're going to go for a little walk here, because you might have spotted this big red Ferrari truck. That was a team transport bus, which even has a lounge and I think even a bedroom inside it from back in the day. But what I particularly like is what's in front of it, which is quite an unusual thing, because this is a Peugeot. This is a Peugeot with a Ferrari shield on the side. Enzo Ferrari rode in this. It was effectively the support car, Peugeot 404 brake. And I guess Enzo must have decided, if you think about this, back in the early 60s, that it wouldn't be a good look to be in one of the competitors' cars like Ford or Mercedes or anything like that, anything else Italian. And this is pre-Fiat. And he clearly had a thing for Peugeots. So this is a Peugeot with a Ferrari badge, one of not many, again preserved in original condition, and even with spare louder parts sitting up on top of it. It's all of this history all together. And I mean, even just standing next to cars, could you imagine driving in this? Could you imagine seating in that little cabin, driving in that thing? Back in the 1960s, 1964, this car was raced by Lorenzo Bandini and John Surtees, original unrestored condition. It's honestly, you just don't know where to look and what to say in here. It's totally, totally out of this world. Absolutely amazing. I've just spotted a Alpina Z8 up there, having mentioned them earlier, and the 2 F1 cars hanging are show cars, hence why there's no issue with liquids inside those, but still mind-blowing, that's all I can say. I imagine This is a car you've been waiting to see a little bit more about, the Maybach Excelero, a one-off with a bit of a story behind it and a lot of mystery about its ownership in the past. In fact, this was originally commissioned by Fulda, who are a subsidiary of Goodyear, to test high-performance tyres to make a car that could go 350 kilometers per hour. So what they did was effectively take the Maybach 57 platform with a V12 that makes 700 horsepower and create a completely unique vehicle. It actually appeared in a music video from Jay-Z, so a lot of speculation about who actually owned it at the time, and a car that's not really been seen all that much since its introduction. Just a very unusual looking, unique creation. Very cool to actually see it myself here. It's about 6 meters long, enormous. This is a 1930s Maybach Zeppelin. Zeppelin became a trim model really of the 57 and 62, 62S Maybachs before it was brought in-house to Mercedes as a trim level of the S-Class, for example. But this is where that began, technically. In front of it is a 1966 Heritage GT, new model of course, a car we're very familiar with, but for each of the first 4 years of production of the Ford GT, the Heritage editions, a special edition for that year, pay tribute to the respective year back in the 1960s and the winning cars, because Ford won every year from 66 through 66, 67, 68 to 69. So this was the original livery worn by the car that actually won at Le Mans back in 1966, replicated for a limited run of cars for the first 4 years, and then for the extra years they made a few different special editions. This GT40 is actually a race winner. This takes us back to a completely original car that raced in the 1960s. This won the 1967 Targa Florio and the Nürburgring of that year. The Écurie Ford France team, that exact car, again, sitting right here. And then, as a Mercedes guy, come on, let's come down this end first. The GT Black Series, of course, we're actually here today with my GT Black Series outside. This is the Project One livery, only available for customers of the AMG One. So a maximum of 275 cars. You could choose to have it either painted from silver at the front through to the painted stars at the back, or from black, as you see it here, along with a few other Petronas details on the interior in the turquoise detailing. And then the recently delivered AMG One. And if you think back to seeing earlier the oldest car in the collection, the 1895 Benz Victoria, this is the newest car in the collection. AMG's Formula One engine equipped road car, limited to 275 cars. This is one of the, I guess, first that's been delivered. Absolutely extraordinary. I love looking at it. It's sat here in its race mode. So you have these louvres over the front arches lifted, and you also have the wing at the back with its active flap up as well. There are so many details to this, even though it's a car that's been critiqued pretty heavily through its journey up to this point. But still, if you offered me one, I'm not going to be saying no. Next to it, however, this is another CLK GTR, but this coupe was the original prototype. There were 20 coupes in total. I suppose it's 27, 28 cars that have been made with all of the different versions. But this was the original prototype of the Mercedes-Benz CLK GTR that then went to race, the homologation vehicle. Again, very, very, very special to see even this car next to the AMG One with a GT40 right alongside, the Excelero. It's a lot to take in. I think a last stroll through paradise, looking at some of the cars here, because the diversity is unbelievable. The presentation is phenomenal. The opportunity to see all of these different cars and to hear some of the stories, and of course each car has information. Many of the cars, in fact, have a QR code. You can scan a video and you can actually see a story about it. I mean, we haven't even touched on the origins of the Lamborghini story, really, the 350 and 400 GT. This is actually a 3-seat configuration car, of which there are only a handful, the idea being for a development driver or a tester to be in the very center. But this is, I don't know how to touch on everything. We didn't really focus on the microcars, on the lineup of cars that you see right here. There are so many different things, and there's an event space with the view over the main hall. There's also the opportunity for different things in the future that might be here as well. And of course, it's a rotating display. So the Ferrari exhibition is being put together now. That will be open very shortly. There will no doubt be more things in the future as well to see some of the variation of cars, 150 or so cars on display here. I wouldn't even begin to know where to pick a favorite or highlights. I mean, from further back, of course, you can see up top on the racks and the storage display on the back wall. But it genuinely is mind-blowing. I don't have a better word to describe this. The Nationales Automuseum here in Germany, the Loh Collection now displayed to the public, set up like this. Amazing stories, amazing cars, and a place I would thoroughly recommend coming to pay a visit. If you're putting together a trip around Europe, coming to visit Germany, this has to be a must-visit location to come and take it in. We've scratched on the surface. There's so much more to it, but a big thanks to the team here for the opportunity to come and visit, to be able to share this with you and to bring you along as I've discovered the collection here, the cars that are here, and to be honest, could happily just pull up a bed and put it right here and spend all night staying awake, staring at everything that's around. That's it for now though. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers.